This session will be recorded. So Scott, you'll be co-host and you'll be able to share your screen and all those good things. And people ask all the time, why don't you use Teams for a Microsoft 365 meeting? People, I use Teams every day of the year, but from a streaming standpoint, that is the main consideration, not for meeting functionality. Let's see. Okay, let's get it going. Welcome to the first meeting of 2024. Oh, Teams events. Okay, let's talk about that. I need to brush up here. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go into some of the announcements for this meeting before we transition over to our featured speaker for the evening, Scott Brewster. So let's see. There we go. Welcome to the Baltimore SharePoint Users Group monthly meeting. Baltimore SharePoint will be undergoing a name change to reflect the current direction that Microsoft is heading in. And for the past, I would say, year and a half, we've been, let's say, broadening our focus from, let's say, just SharePoint itself to Microsoft 365 suite of applications and quite a bit of Power Platform in itself. This session tonight will be a good old-fashioned IT pro presentation, and we haven't had a good IT pro session in quite some time, so I'm looking forward to that. The gentleman who is going to be speaking is one of my favorite, let's say, thought leaders when it comes to security, permissions, and all things in between. So you're in for a great treat tonight. And I'd like to thank our streaming partners who are broadcasting to their organizations, whether nonprofit, whether youth groups, so on and so forth. Thank you very much for carrying this broadcast. This broadcast will be recorded and promoted throughout the year for those who, let's say, via our instant vintage series, where we, of course, share the sessions that people request and they ultimately miss. So the question is, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around, does it make a sound? And in this case, we record the tree falling so that you can check it out later on. So we're going to get into who we are as a group and what is Baltimore Spud? Once upon a time, many years ago, in the 2000s, early 2000s, there was a server platform known as Office SharePoint Server. And so, happened to work at a company that decided to put all their eggs into the support of companies practices that were focused on early adoption of MOS 2007. Now, at the time, MOS 2007 was the let's say fastest growing and highest selling from a license standpoint server platform in the history of the Microsoft Corporation. However, the resources in terms of the tech nets and blogs and community was still in its infancy, still developing. And so there was a lot of late nights from our team, and many of the people on that team went on to do some great things in the Microsoft space. But one person in particular named Eric Harlan said, "Hey, we need to find answers. We need to build more or less a knowledge base around this area." And so at the time, I was the head of marketing for SUG DC. So I was driving from Baltimore County to the Falls Church, Reston Falls Church area. Group moved around quite a bit, and the opportunity to move a bit closer and host the same type of meetings was appealing to me. And so, at the same complex, which is now the Under Armour complex, if you go to South Baltimore, the Domino Sugar sign that you can see from the Inner Harbor is where this group was first founded. And so, since that time, every single month, we have had a meeting of some sort through pandemics, mortgage crisis, you name it, rain, sleet, snow, hail. We have had a meeting. And so, uh, Maryland's longest running Microsoft community learning institution. And when you look at, let's say, the I sat down with a business coach, and he wanted me to, charge premium prices for this user group. But aside from that bad advice, he did help me to start to quantify the value of the group. And since that meeting, I started to think about, well, what is the value of the group and who have we helped? And so over 5,000 Microsoft professionals, either new or established, have been trained or been to our meetings, so on and so forth. So 25 Microsoft practices. This is one of my favorite metrics. As I've been I was born into, let's say, family business, and throughout my life, that's the lens through which I see the world, and which also includes 12 executives that have, let's say, started out as employees or contractors and have matured into leadership roles, some of which for Microsoft. So that's those are metrics that I'm very proud of. Special thanks to ProObject. And prior to meeting virtually, which we're meeting virtually until further notice, ProObject was our location. Thank you, Ted Staley. Ted kept the lights on in terms of logistics and making sure that we were able to get in the building, Wi-Fi and other logistics as well. So if you are looking for work, ProObject was nominated one of the top 100 companies to work for in the state of Maryland. And so tmstaley at proobject.com is the place to go to send your resume. And so we'll move along. Community news and events. I like to say that I love the branding of Community Days Miami. They're running a really tight ship down in Miami. That event is happening tomorrow, as well as February 10th. Community Days DC, and the leadership. Scott is on this, is the featured speaker tonight, and so the SharePoint Saturday DC event has been a flagship event in our market in our region, and so this is the kind of the rebirth, and so I definitely encourage you to register and participate for Community Days DC if you're local, since this is being broadcast virtually. So definitely check that out February 10th. As far as Community Days Baltimore, that is coming soon. Stay tuned for confirmation of dates. We are getting the band back together and going to have an event this year in person. Call for speakers. Now, we are opening the doors for technical presentations of all types. This could be, let's say, break fix, lessons learned, or let's say a 50 to 60-minute longer presentation with a demo. The value of speaking is that it's extremely contagious and professionally beneficial. So everyone has nerves when they deliver their first or next presentation, especially when you're first getting started. But once you get going, you get the speaker's bug. And so user groups are great audiences to hone your material, work out new topics, get feedback. And since I've been a part of every session since we've been in existence, I have a great insight in terms of what an audience may want to see or what would be interesting, because if it is interesting, I'm going to promote the replay. So I have a vested interest in you doing well. And so if you just want to do, let's say, a lessons learned, for example, my very first, let's say, Microsoft focused presentation was on, it was actually AvePoint backup and restore way back when. And so that's was a 10-minute presentation. I was up all night working on that 10 minutes, and here we are today, many years later. And so I encourage you, if you want to be a speaker, you can reach out to me through our Meetup platform, or send me an email directly, or reach out through social media. I'm not too hard to find, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, moving along. In terms of ground rules for our presentation, I'm going to serve as the, let's say, in the background. So the chat itself, any comments, questions during the session. If you're already brought up as, let's say, a panelist, you can unmute when Scott asks for any type of feedback. But I'll also be pausing during the session for those who use the chat to basically call out the questions or comments that may come about. And so, like I said, this will be recorded. If you don't want to be on camera, you don't have to, let's say, turn on your camera, and we'll go from there. And now, our featured presentation. This gentleman has an established background both in federal and public sector work. This gentleman is a United States military veteran and has a long history of thought leadership within the DC, Maryland region, ranging from administrative to permissions to backup and restore to, let's say, governance. And so this gentleman runs the SharePoint users group of DC and is currently leading the charge for Community Days DC, currently serving as the chief technical officer at a great friend of the program here, DNA Solutions and Consulting. I bring to the stage the great, the talented, the wonderful Scott Brewster.
Yay. Let me go on camera. Maybe. There we go.
There you go.
Gonna work through my list here. We might end up doing a lot more than 12 in the amount of time that we have here. I manage about 30 something tenants right now. And so I'll give you a lot of different tips and tricks. I'm not going to expand my list here, but I have different profiles for a lot of customers because jumping through to work on one tenant to the next, to the next, to the next, it just helps to have multiple profiles. And then I'm not trying to reshare or try to figure out what account I need to log in with and all that. So I'm using the DNA educational tenant. So some of the stuff is going to be harder for me to work through only because there's only one license account right now, mine. And I don't have the right license for me to do some of the things I would normally do in a different environment. But to start, MFA, it drives me nuts. I have not seen it turned on a few tenants whenever I first started. Where do we go? So there are a couple ways you can get to that by going through identity. Typically, if you come to the home on um, a new tenant, you're going to see different things, and it's going to suggest that you do some of those. Um, this one is something newer, and I think I know why, because I don't have a DMARC record in GoDaddy for this particular domain yet. So you want to go and set up MFA, and one option is go into identity, and you have, what was it? Nope. Ah, it's been, I'm gonna feel stupid here if I don't find the link. Well, you can always type in MFA. And so you can, there you go. There's MFA getting started.
Hey,
So,
Scott. Scott, I'm
yes,
sorry to interrupt, but it was just
please.
pointed out you're not actually sharing your screen.
Oh my God. I wish someone had said that a couple minutes ago. Oh my God.
No harm, no foul. I just called it out.
I feel extra stupid right now. Thanks.
Yeah. Gives you time to find the MFA icon.
Yeah. So anyway, if you can't ever find something, you can always go click on it up here. So doing MFA, of course, we have to wait for how long it takes for things to show, but there's no way to hide this. Mm.
Scott, I think they moved it under protection to authentication methods.
Did they? Ah, carefully approved. Oh, I know why. It's because I'm an E3. Yeah, so you'd use one of these to get this. So typically with the tenants that I have, everyone's getting business premium, or because of like nonprofit status, we might do like an E3 plus Azure P1 or Azure P2. And that way you can do the MFA requirements. I was wondering why I can't do it because I only have an E3. So, yes, go in here, hit MFA, go through the setup, and make certain that MFA is turned on, especially for the admin accounts. It's just, it befuddles me that people haven't turned it on. I do have users who come back and they're angry when we turn on MFA because they don't like the inconvenience of going to their phone and checking for that. And I'm like, well, I don't like to pull out my keys to, my house, but there's a lot of comfort in knowing that I can lock my door when I leave. So, sometimes we have to sacrifice a little bit of convenience there just for that. So, next one. A lot of times I will find that they have created additional users for info or whatever, but they never set them up as shared mailboxes. So I'm just saying that you want to create, if you have one of these as a fake account, or not fake, but a non-human account, like info, right? Uh, Next, I'm not going to create a license on it, but if you were to create that as regular end user, I'll delete it here in a minute. But if you were to create that as a regular end user and then they don't create that as shared mailbox, you don't get some of the benefits. The other thing that I have seen a lot of is that they will share the credentials for that one account with multiple people. And that just blows my mind that they had not gone in here and then delegated access. So that's confusing if you want to see how we delegate access. Quick mail. And so in the mailbox permissions, you'd go in here and you'd say that somebody else can then have permissions to read, write, and all that kind of stuff. It's just one of the common things I've run across a lot. Maybe they have a cleaner environment where you are. It just kind of blows my mind. I have a lot of users here. They're all like actors and actresses, but this is for educational purposes. The let's see here. Next, the group to make groups. So okay. So the group to make groups. I have a link here. I will drop into the chat for everybody. Paste. That is the Microsoft stuff. They've recently changed the version of PowerShell that you need to run this. So I'm not going to try to rerun it right now with everybody. It is very detailed and laid out properly, just so that you know that you can go in here and do this. You need to do this, okay? Far too often, I have seen sprawl because individual users go into Outlook and they say, oh, there's a thing for groups. Test, test, test. And then you end up with all of these numbers behind test because more than one person has now created test. And it's very annoying because it's something that you have to clean up. And if you've had any records retention policies in place, they become even more of a pain to remove. So just saying, you're going to want to create that group. You would go in here into your groups. You would create security group right here, add a group, and then you'll have it there. So no, I think I have a created group. Apparently not. So yeah, you just come in here. Oh, next. Group makers. Next. I don't normally set a lot of our groups to have people able to email them from outside. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Definitely something you should think about ahead of time before you go to create the groups. But you're just going to create another group in here. It's an Azure AD security group, and then you'd use that to create this. And only those people who are in here can create a group. If you can't create a group, that means you can't create a team, and it gets much nicer thing to take care of. At the same time, however, there was. I want to. I've got it in here somewhere. I'll find it. So there's a policy for naming conventions. I just had that up. Oh, I did have that group. There it is. Yeah, I don't normally make it email anyone. I'll find it here in a second. But so the next one I had on my list here. Okay, in the org settings, a lot of people haven't configured this one. So bookings, you can accidentally share way too much information. So I'd say encourage people to use bookings, but every time they make a booking, kind of a shared bookings, especially, they end up creating additional email boxes or at least email addresses. And that can get a little bit ugly to work with in your list of active users. But I would say that you do want to maybe turn on that and enforce naming policies. I like naming policies for a lot of things. So I would definitely do that one. Okay. In the calendars, definitely I have an issue with this one. And I know that we blocked it at one of the agencies I used to work for. Sharing your calendar with people outside of your organization. That's a bad idea. Just because you might have attachments and things like that. And sometimes they just share too much. So, you can allow people, but like, uh, maybe you limit this to only free busy info or something like that. I just don't like it. I'd rather share people my bookings link and then they can just find their time on my calendar and not try to see my calendar. So yeah, you'd want to limit some of those things. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't want people to add anyone from an outside group. Maybe you have a lot of sharing where you're working with other entities. If you're going to do that, I would turn on the B2B settings and bring them in as external, and then they can add them. I would not allow my end users to just start inviting people in to a group or a team. So I would definitely turn that off. For this educational tenant, I do leave it on there for all kinds of things. And then I don't ask other people to do it, but I wouldn't allow for ownerless groups. Next. Loop. I love Loop, but the data retention stuff on there isn't exactly prime time. So you might want to turn off Loop until you have decided as an organization how you're going to treat Loop. I personally love it, but you might want to turn that off. I had to turn that off for a client the other day because of records retention issues, security things, and things like that. This, I don't want them to publish planner, because then again, it's that iCalendar feed, and then it gets shared with people outside of your organization. The potential for a security breach in or accidental leak is just too high for a lot of my clients. So I would turn that one off. Yeah, that's where I want to go. Click. There's your MFA settings. I think that's the main stuff I wanted to hit right there. Also, if you don't do any Microsoft 365 backups through a third party, I've been using Cove recently. We used to have Datto. You can go through a lot of other third party vendors to do 365 backups, but Microsoft just released this, so you can set this up and it will do a backup. Personally, I'm not thrilled with the Microsoft offering yet, because it keeps it in the same data center as your tenant. So if they had a hurricane or a tornado or whatever caused the issue, um, like that's not really good for disaster recovery. So I like going to a third party for that purpose. But um, maybe because of the nature of your office, this is something that you want to go ahead and start setting up. Personally, again, I'd go with a third party. Next one. Add or sync users to, nah, not that one. Okay, this one. I have a couple customers who they have insisted that their employees not be able to reset their own passwords. I found that ridiculous, but it improves your secure score inside of your tenant if you do turn on the ability for users to reset their own passwords. So it's a little wizard. You can click and it'll walk you right through it. So I would suggest that you do that. I'm not going to go and click on this one for limiting the admins access that they need, because I have only one real licensed accountant here. However, I do have a backup um, admin account that I keep that is kind of for like break fix, in case like I get locked out of my own admin account. But I usually make it a very strange um, account login, so that it's not something that people are going to guess. No one's going to say admin or Scott and then be able to, start running passwords. The username is probably harder to figure out than the password. But that's just like a break fix thing. I don't like passwords that never expire. If you would like to do your pronouns, go right ahead. Um, I don't understand that sometimes. Get fast, secure browsing with Edge. You can deploy Edge and make that a policy. I don't know. A lot of people have frustrations with that. I do have a lot of tenants as a relationship for billing purposes, so I can get the billing information all in one place. Um, so, but that's the nature of being in an MSP where I would be doing that. Yeah, I do like looking at this software updates. I won't be able to do anything with it here because of licensing, but one of my computers at home hasn't been turned on for a minute, so it's one build behind. So it's nice to know like who's not using the right thing. I do have RMM software in order to manage updates on all kinds of devices. But this is this educational tenant, so it's not like I do anything with it. Next, alert policies. you definitely need to configure this. A lot of people do not configure this at all. The main thing you have to remember though is make certain to go back through here if you get rid of somebody in your company, because I was getting a lot of spam getting generated from this into one of the accounts. But whenever you get like suspicious email sending patterns detected or any of these other things, you want to um, set the email recipients. If you set it for all the global admins, that's usually the right way to do it. But sometimes people will put in names, and then that's where I was getting some weird confusion. So you can set these up and get all kinds of alerts, and you can create new policies. I like the policies. So, so threat management. Next. So if user submitted an email as junk, fish, malware, and then every time the activity matches a rule, and then next, and then we can send it to the right person, no notification limit, and turn it on, yes. And that way, whenever someone's inside of their Outlook and they say, this is junk, or they report it, it gets an alert notification sent to you. Because their tenant is separate from my email, I have to go in there and configure a lot of these so that I get the proper alerts sent to my support box. So it creates a ticket, and then we can go and update all the anti-spam rules and things like that. But you definitely want to go in here and set plenty of alert policies for different issues. There are ones that I have configured mostly for people who are sharing something externally. Anytime someone adds a site collection administrator, um, and then the junk phishing, that's a big one. But you can go through here and make all kinds of them. So just know that. And then if you want to turn some of them off, you can always turn that off. So just saying, it's one of the more important things that you want to do. Oh, service health. So you want to do this one. So I don't. Okay, whenever you come here for the first time, it's going to ask if you want to. You can do it again. Yes. So customize, send me an email notification about service health so that whenever Microsoft is having the issue, that you get a notification. Because more often than not, I find out that Microsoft had an issue with Teams for a day and a half, or with whatever from LinkedIn, and so I have to turn these on. Not all of my tenants are on the Eastern or in the same data center. How's that? So it's nice to have these turned on so that if there is an issue, you get a notification. Just understand that if you are managing 31 companies or 31 tenants, that maybe you don't turn them all on for everything, because you'll then be flooded. But at least one per data center that Microsoft has. So it's important to have that on there. Again, this just customize, go here to email, send yourself an alert, and then you can put that in there. Quick. Let's exchange. I have this set up. Policies. You can change up these policies if you like. That's not the one I'm looking for. Let's see. Naming function. Oh, there we go. So 365 groups and Microsoft Teams naming policy. I would just definitely suggest that you go through here and do this one. The documentation is here, but there is a link to just go there and do it. Image groups. Naming policy. There we go. So you can create this custom mail policy or group naming policy and come through here and say, I want the department name or whatever. You can set these up. It's just so that you don't get like one that I ran into a problem with a lot working at some of the agencies. You had, a SharePoint team for the CIO. You had a SharePoint team for the CFO. You had a SharePoint team for the CIO. Like everybody had their own SharePoint team. Well, someone would always try to be the first one to say, I'm SharePoint, and make their own team. And so you had a lot of real estate hijacking. So again, this should probably be part of your governance. And then, just have the policies in place. You also might want to do blocked words. I have seen people put in bad words. They got relieved, but I thought that was funny. So yes, go in here, make yourself a group's naming policy. It just helps get certain things done. The group delegation, I need to do that one. So if you have groups, so if you have a group and you want someone else to be able to email on its behalf, right? It's not here that you do that, but you can still make it done. So you would have to go into Exchange. Oops. Do this one. Settings, and then delegates. So for me to be able to send out as Project X, I would come in here and then make myself a delegate so that I could do that. It's just a useful thing because I don't like the shared mailboxes because you have to pay for the licenses. I would rather people have a Microsoft 365 group. They can then look at those groups and get all the emails into those boxes and or have it forward them a copy of the message. But then if they needed to send out on behalf of, they could do that. And so it doesn't have to be licensed. It does work a little bit differently. It's still going to be connected to Teams. It's still going to have its own calendar and all that other good stuff. So I'm trying to avoid creating shared mailboxes and instead use 365 groups where they can send out email from them. So that's just another one that I would suggest doing because you can save a lot of money. I see the bills that we send out to people to pay for the licenses. And if you have, 50 people in your organization, and another 20 shared mailboxes, even if they're paying, $6 a license, that's $300, or whatever. Like it just gets, yeah, it's up very quickly. So I'm always looking for ways to save a couple bucks. So I would definitely suggest having groups. Now, on my personal tenant, I do this, and this is mainly so that I don't log into my banks with an email address that goes to me, right? I don't use Scott at something for my banks. I don't use Scott at something for my Facebook account. I don't use Scott at something for almost all of my um, things that I work with. I use a group. For some of those groups, I have added my wife as an account so that if she needs to log in, she logs in with that and she can get the um, MFA tokens or whatever that happen to get emailed out. So I like to do that. But to my clients, I often say we need to add an alias to your email account, and then you're going to use that alias as your login for Amazon or whatever other services that you're using, because you used to practice a very bad habit of reusing the same email address and password for all of your different accounts, and one of them got breached, and so now all of them are at risk of being breached because you continue to use the same username and password for multiple accounts. um, so I have them set up aliases for each of the services that they're logging into. So if you have an Amazon account, it's going to be Amazon at yourdomain.com to do the login, and then the tokens will go right back to your email box. So it's just one of those things. It's a kind of a security measure, because if they get your alias and password, uh, if they try to log into your tenant with it, they can't get in because it's not your username. So again, this is like why I use a funky GUID for my backup admin account. It's so that no one ever gets to know what it is, because no one should ever know what it is. I use an alias for all these things. One of the last things I want to just talk about, it doesn't show it well enough here, and that's settings. It's not scrolling. Oh, no, I'm in Exchange. So under your domains, it's going to say I'm all green. Okay, I'm not all green. So it's going to say I'm all green for Microsoft, but what you don't see here is DKIM. So you come in here, click DKIM, and it should walk me through this process. And maybe you've already done this. I don't know, but come on, Microsoft, you're going slow. So I have no DKIM keys right now, and yet if I look at that, it says I'm green. Not good. So if you haven't done a lot of this yet, in your own domain register, whether it's GoDaddy or whatever one that you happen to be using, you want to go in, and your spoof record you've probably already done at least once, okay, on the initial setup of your account. And that, Microsoft is going to demand it to, so that it says include protection.outlook.com, blah, 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 or outlook.office.com, so that email coming from your tenant doesn't get marked as, spoof, as spam email, right? If you have a scanner that scans the email and then it gets sent to you, and you have not included its IP address, it's probably going to come up as spam. So you need to add that to this spoof record. So the spoof says, where can it come from? Okay. The DKIM record is just a signature for authenticity. And you need to make certain that that gets put in there. The last one that you're going to need to have is called DMARC. And AOL, Microsoft for Outlook.com, Hotmail.com, Live.com, Yahoo, AOL, all the other big names within the last few weeks, especially, have been demanding that your email have a DMARC. And all it is to say if the DKIM or the spoof don't come up in your DNS records whenever they get the email in, what should they do with this email? And at that point, you can say policy P equals none, which means they can go on through, which is really bad. Or you can say quarantine, so it'll go automatically in somebody else's quarantine or junk email. Or you can say reject. And that way, if somebody is impersonating my account and they try to send an email to a Gmail account and it doesn't match my spoof or my DKIM, it will automatically get a non-delivery report sent back to that user. That's how it should be. So a lot of people haven't done this. I hate to say it, Shadid, you're one of them, because I get a lot of your stuff sent to spam, or at least it used to. So you might want to check your records in DNS for that one. If you haven't configured your anti-spam policies, I suggest this. In some of the tenants that I went to, I saw mail flow policies. Where was it? Let's go back here. Exchange. I saw so mail flow rules, and I saw them adding rules in here so that if there was an account that they wanted to block, because they recognized it was spam or something, they were putting it in here to make it non-deliverable or make it go to junk or whatever. That's just bad. You need to come in here to your spam rules under threat policies and go anti-spam and update this, because your spam policy go all the way down. That's where you edit it right here. So I would add a lot of blocked stuff, but that's done here. If you haven't yet, I would highly suggest that all of your senior leadership, you go into anti-phishing and you can turn the so you want to be able to add domain pairs. This is so that you can get the records in there of your senior leadership so that no one can impersonate them. So if it says, hey, I'm CEO someone, at my Gmail account, I can't log into my account right now. Can you send me all of these prepaid Visa cards? I actually see those. There's a little extra level of spoof protection that you can put in here for your senior leadership. You wouldn't want to do that to everybody, but definitely your senior leadership. They love to try to attack the finance people the most. So that's who I would put in there. Anyone in finance, basically. So spoof intelligence, you want to have that on. The anti-malware, blah, blah, blah. You should always come in here and just configure these things if you haven't yet. That's the data loss prevention. So I just created one. So you can create new data loss prevention and say if it's medical and health, so for HIPAA complaints or whatever you happen to be working with, there are different things already put in here. You can go custom, and then you can say, I want, come you can have it restrict to different admin units. So if you're not using admin units inside of Azure, maybe you should. Kind of like OUs, but you might want to create these things. And that way you can say that if it's in finance, maybe they're a little bit more restricted than if they are in the CIO's office rather than sales, whatever. You can set up different policies for data loss prevention so that they can't accidentally send crap out. The main one that I normally put this on is for credit card info because I have a lot of people who forget to do encrypted email. And so we turn this on to help stop that for different things for financials and stuff. That is everything I had on my list, but I am free to take any questions about weird stuff that you might have questions about. I would suggest maybe if you haven't done this yet, attack simulation training. A lot of third-party vendors out there do this, but you can get the trial licenses and then do it and then turn it all off. But this just helps to see who's dumb enough in your office to fall for some of the phishing attempts that are out there. So you can do through Microsoft, or you can configure it through a third party. If you go with the third party, you usually have to set up a whole bunch of rules so that their stuff can get in without being recognized as spam. So there's usually an extra lift for their fake emails to come through just to see if they would fall for it. So I prefer the Microsoft ones on this particular thing.
Quick question, Scott. This is regarding adoption and buy-in. Let's say in organizations where you may be on a SharePoint team or Microsoft 365 team, but you don't have full access to the admin center. What do you recommend in terms of, especially with end user lockdown, to get that necessary buy-in? Would you go in a direction of reference material, or how would you go about that?
I don't understand end user lockdown.
Well, in terms of, let's say, best practices for securing your tenant for your end users.
Well, if you don't have admin rights to the team's admin center, that's not your job. But no, I guess in a lot of ways, I've mostly worked with organizations that just don't allow any kind of shadow IT. So either you use it or you're fired. That's a great way to do user adoption. As far as policies, though, I would suggest that you might want to go through some of the team's policies and set them up so that people might be allowed to delete some of their chat history. That's something that I used to do at one agency. Every once in a while, is I would have to turn the switch off so that I could delete things for them because they were saying inappropriate things, and then they had HR investigate and this, that, and the other thing, and then I would have to go through there and clean out all that stuff that had been said. But because of data retention policies, mainly, they weren't able to delete it themselves. So if you put too many restrictions on things like that, they might try to use a phone instead of Teams. That's saying. I've seen it happen a lot, but I don't know. I think training and then just showing the art of the possible is the main way to get people to use Teams. I think most people like Teams, but I do have a couple clients who seem to like Zoom over Teams, and it boggles my mind. Um, I know that we're using Zoom here for this, but if this is showing up over, my screen, I can't get to my, you know, title bar here and do much with it. And that gets on my nerves. So there are pros and cons, I guess, with using Zoom over Teams. But I like the fact that they've already paid for it. You don't have to pay for Zoom. Or, you don't, if you don't need to pay for a product, don't. So if Teams is already meeting your requirements, I wouldn't understand the reason for buying all the Zoom licenses that someone would need. I think that having user agreements is essential. A lot of times these companies won't have their insurance checked off if they don't have an acceptable use policy for their end users. And so they need to see that in writing, like when they start, and probably once a year, that there are consequences. So, oh, what you got, Justin?
It was
One
something else
news.
about impersonation, because we've had that problem with the owner and some of the VPs and accountants. So this
Mhm.
basically is any email that has the name of a user come in, throws a giant yellow box up in the middle of the email saying this was from outside the company. It's the same display name, but it's not their email address.
Mm. Oh, I like that. I've seen some, but they weren't doing quite so well. There's a third party product that we are kind of testing right now because it's still in beta, and it's funny because it will say that it's possible spam or possible phishing all the time for emails I get from CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So I get far too many false positives with that product, but it's supposed to look for this kind of stuff.
That's
But I
hilarious.
absolutely love this. I absolutely love this link that you sent because I would like to. I'll tell one of my guys to go push this for a lot of people tomorrow. Um, yeah, that would be an awesome one. Yeah, but we're going to be moving to Perception Point real soon here. Not, and I have no skin in the game as far as reselling this to anybody, but Perception Point uses an artificial intelligence piece now to scan through the emails and check for things. I also use a product called Conceal. So here's the link that he just sent. So FYI. But I use a product called Conceal for a lot of my users, and it will check every email that comes in and all the URLs that are in there if they might go to something bad. They will also check all of the URLs that come up on other web pages I visit and will identify whether it's something bad. And basically, it just opens all of them in their cloud, puts a little security bubble around it to test it, and then it tells you whether or not you can check it or not. And so if you go to something that's really bad, it just pixelates the whole thing and tells you, hey, this is bad. And it just prevents people from being dumb. So it's a
Wow,
wonderful
that
product.
sounds good.
Yeah, this one's a very good product. If you want to hit me up, I can give you the salespeople's names.
Yeah, please do.
Um, so email me and I'll get you connected to the Conceal people that I use. I love this product and it's not expensive at all. It's probably one of the most cost-effective products that I have in the security stack. And then a lot of email protection that they have out there, they basically intercept your mail and then they deliver it to Microsoft, like Proofpoint, Mimecast, Spam Titan. Spam Titan we're using right now. I'm not exactly thrilled with any of them and how they work. They often cause serious email delays. So Perception Point is what I'm going to. They're out of Israel, so that might be an issue if you are working with a a company that does a lot of federal work.
Yeah, that would
But
disqualify
their data
us.
center, and everything is all US. And the way that it works, because they don't take any of your data, they are still FedRAMP. So it's a nice product. But I guess probably you're not going to see them on the low side of a lot of agencies, but the companies that support those agencies can probably use it. Spam Titan is out of Ireland. So I mean, there are a lot of foreign products that we all use, and they might have policies in place so that they can be used by companies who still need to be NIST compliant. So you asked any of them, hey, can you give me your SOC 2 report? Can you give me this? Can you give me that? They'll give it to you and just sign a non-disclosure agreement. So, you might want to look at them. Conceal did in DC back in November. There was a MITRE conference, and so they were advertising to the government directly. So it definitely meets all the requirements to be put onto government equipment as well. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns? I'm gonna steal
It
this.
was very good. There were a couple things I'm going to be implementing tomorrow in my tenant.
Yay. So it was not useless. I'm glad. So that's good news. I like it to be useful.
I don't know, a lot of good, especially with the 365 backup restore and just the whole concept of, hey, same data center, disaster recovery. That's
Yeah, it's not ideal. If it, I use Cove for this company, and for some of my clients that I'm trying to get others moved over to Cove. I just like how it works, and it backs up everything, and it's relatively inexpensive. Um, so that's a good one, because the way that Cove works is they have a separate Azure tenant. So if someone steals your laptop or it goes up in a fire, and we've had a client who had a fire and they lost everything, you can spin up a VM of anything that they had in the backup in an Azure client and remote into it. And some people have even left their things on in there rather than buying new hardware because it's fast enough being in Azure. So that's an ideal use case for me, because they don't keep it in the same tenant or in the same data center where your stuff is. So if you have an East Coast data center, they will find a West Coast data center for your backup. And I just prefer that. And you can get file level restores out of it too. So if you want to find a file that you deleted 3 months ago because you recorded your Teams meeting automatically with OneDrive and it went there and then it deleted automatically because you forgot to save it somewhere else, you could do that.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Cove is a good one.
I looked up Cove here, so I have the landing page. I'll check it out. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Another thing that we use a lot of here, that if you ever need some password managers, because of I have like 40 different passwords that are stored inside of my Microsoft Authenticator app because of accounts that I have on different tenants, but also because of all of the software or platforms that I have to touch. They have their own MFA tokens. But then now I have to do that for all of my other clients. So we have IT Glue. We're trying to get off of IT Glue. Passportal is the one that we're moving to now. So if you come in here, you have a vault and it will store your MFA tokens for you. It's just a useful thing so you don't have to pull it off of your phone to copy and paste that 6-digit code that it might give you. There are other apps that you can get off of the Microsoft Store that will do some of that for you. Some of it's free, some of it's not. Um, it's a useful thing. I would definitely advise getting some kind of an authenticator app for the computer so that you can use it for other accounts and not constantly refer back to your phone. Definitely one of the best things I learned while I'm working here. I had to get a different app to store all my tokens. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Thank you, Scott.
Not a problem.
Okay. Okay. Thank you to those of you who have tuned in, both now and when the replay appears. Join us again later on this month. Double dose of Baltimore SharePoint February 15th for our next virtual session. On behalf of Scott and the Baltimore SharePoint Users Group, thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Hey, don't forget about SharePoint, or I mean the Community Days DC. It's February 10th. If you're not registered, go register.
CommunityDays.org on the home page. You have Community Days DC. Make sure you register February the 10th. Be there.
Good show, Shadid.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take
And
care.
lots of practice. Lots of practice.
20 years of practice.
Hey. All right. So we'll be back later on this month. Thank you guys for joining in.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Ciao.
You guys have a good night.
Good night.